Imagine living in a world that felt completely normal to you. You know, all the problems, the unfairness, even the dirt, just normal. And then imagine looking back on it maybe decades later, and it seems, well, almost unbelievable that people lived like that.
Yeah, that's a really powerful way to frame it, and it's exactly the starting point for our deep dive today.
So we're looking at H.G. Wells's In the Days of the Comet.
We are, but specifically through the eyes of this narrator who's looking back from a completely changed future,
Yeah.
the past he lived through. It's like another planet to him now, almost alien.
Okay, so the novel itself is our main source, this first-person story. And our mission, if you like, is to explore what he called the old world disorder, then this mysterious comet, the sudden change it brings.
And yeah, the incredible transformation of, well, everything. Human consciousness, society, the lot.
It sounds like a massive shift.
Oh, it's profound. It really makes you question your own ideas about how things have to be.
Definitely. Okay, let's start by really painting a picture of this old world, the narrator's youth. It's set in the industrial Midlands, places like Swattingley, Clayton.
That's right. And he doesn't hold back on the details. His own room, for example. He talks about it being dirty, stuffy, poor ventilation. There's a lamp that smells bad, the shade's broken, the floorboards are uneven, the fireplace is tiny and useless, furniture's all neglected. It's just grim, real poverty.
But here's the kicker, right? He looks back and says like this grimy unpleasantness. People didn't really see it as wrong or bad back then. It was just
The most natural and proper setting for existence imaginable. His words. It was just life.
wow. That really says something about how things were just accepted.
Absolutely. It wasn't just him being unlucky. This was the reality for loads of people. It came directly out of the, well, the social structure of the time.
Which was incredibly divided, based on what he says. This idea of the secure and the insecure. Who were they?
So the secure, they were the ones on top. Landowners, factory owners, the capitalists. They owned pretty much everything. The land, the mines, the factories.
Living comfortably, big houses, park.
Exactly. While the insecure, that was the vast majority. The workers, the laborers, they were crammed into these awful, squalid conditions, often didn't have decent clothes or enough food, and jobs were always precarious.
And the narrator, as a young man looking at this, he didn't see, like, complex economic forces. He just saw.
Robbery. Plain and simple.
Yeah.
He points the finger straight at the landlord and the capitalist. And he throws in the lawyer and the priest, for good measure, calls them scoundrels and cheats.
You can really feel the anger in his writing, can't you? That resentment. He names names like Rod and the factory owner, the Verrill family.
Oh yeah, the Verrills, the big landowners.
Yeah.
He admits wanting revenge. It's this really raw, personal bitterness. So it makes sense he'd be drawn towards something like socialism.
That kind of burning anger seems like a key part of the mindset back then.
It is. And he suggests it wasn't just him. The whole society seemed to run on this sort of irrationality.
Yeah, the politics, the media, he calls it a mad era. Politicians are like caricatures, clowns and animals.
Pretty much. And the press, like this paper called the New Paper, he calls it the Yell. It's just described as aimless energy, pumping out lies every day, these nasty caricatures.
He mentions things like the Boer War being treated almost like a joke, even though it was tragic, and the tension with Germany just sort of accepted as inevitable.
Exactly. He sees it all as just monstrous, irrational phenomena. Like the whole world was confused, running on fumes and bad feelings. Unintelligible confusions, I think he calls it.
And it wasn't just the big stuff. Even the legal system, he paints it as totally biased, an upper-class weapon.
Yeah, his example with his mother and the landlord Pettigrew over the leaky roof is really telling. Legally, the landlord should fix it, but she can't get anywhere.
Yeah.
The system just wasn't set up for ordinary people. It protected property above all else.
Even religion sounds kind of weak. His mother's faith is fading, focused on hellfire and brimstone.
Yeah, curly flames and denouncing lusts. Meanwhile, he's reading socialist stuff, full of doubt. It doesn't seem like faith offered much comfort or real guidance then.
Okay, and then there's love and relationships. Before this change, that sounds particularly messed up.
Yeah, stifling is a good word. He talks about this conspiracy of stimulating silences around sex for young people. And the main idea of love was completely possessive, exclusive, this secret, secluded system of two.
Like you had to own the other person, and that leads to jealousy, bitterness.
Exactly. Things losing their freshness. He even says it felt somehow wrong, discreditable, to have feelings for more than one person, or even interests outside that coupledom.
And his own story with Nettie and Edward Verrall, the rich guy, is the main example, right?
Absolutely. He uses really strong language about himself. Wounded, smarting egotist, driven by intense jealousy, keen, unmeasuring hatred, baffled, passionate desire. He's brutally honest about how cruel and possessive love felt in that old world.
So, okay, we've got this picture. Grim, unfair, confused, bitter, possessive. A pretty awful world, honestly. And then the comet arrives.
Right. And at first, the narrator barely notices it. Just another speck. His friend Parload, who's into science, is excited. But our narrator, he's too caught up in his own misery and anger with Nettie and Verrill.
Which kind of shows how blinkered people were.
I think so, yeah. But the comet keeps getting bigger. Night after night, it grows, becomes this huge thing in the sky, the greatest star. Eventually, the whole night sky is filled with these luminous green clouds.
And he contrasts those nights, which sound kind of amazing, beautiful even.
Yeah, spectacular, beautiful, and memorable, he says.
Contrasts them with the daytime, the same old dusty, habitual day, the soiled, disorderly routine. Like, people are just ignoring this cosmic spectacle overhead.
Completely oblivious until science starts catching up, predicting shooting stars, finding some unknown element in the comet's tail.
Ah, the unknown element. That's the key, isn't it?
That's the trigger for the change.
Right. So how does it happen, this change? The sources talk about a green gas.
Yeah, green gas or green vapors sweeping across the whole planet from the comet's tail. And it's instantaneous, more or less.
Yeah, it just knocks everyone out.
Universal insensibility. People just fall asleep mid-action.
Yeah.
Gambling, drinking, fighting, praying, working in a loom, whatever they were doing.
It happens everywhere at once, different times of day.
Yep. Twilight in Europe, afternoon in Australia, middle of the night elsewhere. He gives these little snapshots. A preacher talking about the end of the world under a gas lamp, soldiers just stopping on the battlefield, sailors on ships, train drivers, cars crashing, everyone just cut out.
Like a switch was flipped, a global chemical intervention.
Exactly. Bypassing all the old world's mess entirely.
Okay. And then they wake up. What's that like?
It's described as this incredible universal feeling. Gladness, joy, refreshment, a renewal of purpose. He even talks about a physical change in intimate bodily sensations, nervous metabolically, like they feel physically better, clearer.
But the main thing is the mental shift, right? The clarity.
Absolutely key.
Yeah.
Suddenly their minds just work better. Deliberate animation of the intelligence. Vigor with consideration, judgment with confident enterprise. All the old defensiveness, the ego stuff, the barriers between people, gone. Vanished.
So people can just talk to each other, honestly.
Yeah, complete frankness, without reservations.
Yeah.
And the effect is stunning. All those massive problems, war, class hatred, politics, ownership, they suddenly seem ridiculous, like looking back on a bad dream.
A mad and vanished illusion, he calls it. Extraordinary foolishness.
And you see it in little moments. This grocer, Wiggins, who'd hated his rival across the street for 20 years, just goes over and says, "It did us no good, all our hatred." Just like that.
Wow. And soldiers asking, why were we even fighting? Politicians admitting they were just blunderers.
Yeah, Melmount, the ex-minister, basically says, "I was a blunderer. We didn't know what we were doing." Even aristocrats like Lord Rickover saying, "I've been a fool," realizing their lives were pointless. The old motivations just evaporate.
And with that clarity, they immediately start rebuilding.
Oh, yeah. And the scale is immense. It's not just tinkering, it's a total clear out.
They burn almost everything. Old buildings, furniture, books.
Nearly all of it.
Yeah.
He estimates maybe only one building in 5,000 was saved in England. Everything else went into these great bonfires, anything associated with the old way of life.
He sounds almost happy describing burning dirty carpets, bad furniture, dusty books, even stuffed birds.
He really does. Because for him, it wasn't just getting rid of junk. It was burning the warped and crippled ideas, the contagious base suggestions that were embedded in all that old stuff. Factories, churches, fences, if they didn't serve a clear, rational purpose now, they went.
A total reset. So what does the new society look like? Land isn't privately earned anymore.
Nope, becomes communal. Those grand old houses, they get repurposed. Communal dining halls, places for the elderly to live. Like Checkshill House, the Verrill's place, old Mrs. Verrill ends up running it as a hostess.
That's quite a turnaround.
Isn't it? And industry gets reorganized, integrated better with the countryside, but kept separate from homes and schools. And the law becomes simple, clear, accessible. Rationality rules.
And people themselves, they interact differently, more openly.
Completely. That watchfulness, the suspicion, it's gone. He meets Melmount, the politician, who just openly talks about how foolish they all were. His old landlord, Pettigrew, expresses genuine shame for how he treated the narrator's mother. The barriers are just down.
And this really changes relationships, especially love. You mentioned Nettie and Veril again.
Yeah, that's maybe the most striking example. He sees them on the beach after the change, and his first thought isn't jealousy, it's just how fine they were, how graceful and human.
So his love for Nettie comes back, but it's cleaner.
Exactly. No longer frantic, but sane, he says, enlarged and glorified. The bitterness is just gone.
And they actually talk about it, honestly.
They do. Veril talks about his old raging desire. Nettie reflects on feeling chosen, but now sees that whole exclusive love thing as silly barbarous teaching, selfish, brutish, like something that has no sense.
So love isn't about possession anymore, not that secret, secluded system of do.
Not at all. It's part of a wider love. People can love deeply, but they also have their own lives. They meet at public tables. There's no ownership. He finds a new love himself with Anna, based on shared work and understanding. But he still loves Nettie too, just without the old pain and jealousy. It's appreciation, not possession.
Looking back from this future point, the old world must seem incredibly strange to him.
Almost impossible to grasp. He calls it incredible, a queer, barbaric drama played in a forgotten tongue. He really struggles to convey how weird it all was.
He mentions that things underwater weren't affected.
Right, which highlights that the change was specifically about human consciousness. It didn't change fish, just us.
And that first newspaper after the change? That's powerful. Old war news just dismissed, and the headline is just, what has happened?
Yeah, it sums it all up, a complete reset. The old world is irrelevant now.
It's hard for him to explain the old motivations, the old ways of thinking to people who haven't lived through it, because their minds are fundamentally different.
It really makes you think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
How much of our reality is just the way our consciousness happens to be wired right now.
Which kind of leads us to a final thought, something to chew on. The narrator suggests the old world's mess wasn't inevitable. It was because they lacked a clear will to do better. People just drifted along without real purpose. So if this story imagines a chemical change bringing that clarity and purpose, what does that say about us? Is there some potential locked away in our own consciousness? Could we find a catalyst or maybe even cultivate that kind of change ourselves?
That's the big question Wells leaves us with, isn't it? What are we capable of if our minds could just shift gear?